Hello, my business moguls in training. It is so great to see you again. You are listening to the Do.Different.Better Show, and I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, where we talk about wealth moves for everyday people. And I am so excited. I have a really special treat for you. Just as promised, I have the amazing Renee Hastings here with me today. And as you read, time isn't just money, it is a movement. And she is here to talk all about it. Renee, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Elaine, thank you so much for having me. I am honored.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, before we get started, I want to give you all the breakdown of Miss Renee. Renee Hastings is the president and CEO of Executive Help Now, a premier virtual assistance agency with over 15 years of experience. Renee and her team deliver expert administrative support, podcast production, and business consulting services to small business owners, content creators, and busy executives. Starting her entrepreneurial journey in 1996, Renee holds a degree in business management and has been a Dale Carnegie leadership training coach. She's appeared on NBC's KCRA News 3 and now serves as an inspirational speaker, podcast host, philanthropist, and small group Bible study coach. Her mission, freeing up time from life's most important moments. Welcome to the show, Renee.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to dive in and share what I have been through and experiences I have gone through to benefit the audience and hopefully be a blessing and help some folks avoid some of the common mistakes that I've seen, heard, and dealt with myself.
And that is exactly why you're here. So let's get into the first question that I ask every guest, and that is, what was your first memory of money?
So my first memory of money is probably going back to elementary school when I had to go to the lunch line and get in the free lunch line, and everyone else got to go in the regular lunch line.
Mm.
And my food came in these prepackaged aluminum foil and then plastic 2 containers. And then everyone else had these nice trays with salads and hamburgers and things like that. And I was like, why is my lunch so different? Why do I have to eat this and everyone else gets to eat that? I would say that was my first memory of money and the difference money can make in the lives of children.
And I have a similar story. I remember it wasn't so much in elementary school because I went to a very small Catholic school, and we didn't have that. But when I got to public school, I remember seeing that difference of like, why do people have different food? What is this free lunch thing, and why is that terrible? Like, why is that so much more look horrible than everybody else's food? Well,
Right?
I've got a follow-up question, and that is, so when did you realize that money had influence? And is this the same story or is it a different story?
So I would say that this is a different story because while I was still young, I recognized the influence that it had because I was raised by a single mother who worked very hard to take care of me and my brother. It was just the 2 of us growing up, but she had just barely enough to make ends meet and often lived from paycheck to paycheck. And often there wasn't enough to go between paycheck to paycheck. And so she had to get her hustle on to kind of make $1 out of 15 cents, as my grandfather used to say. Mm-hmm. And so when I got an opportunity to start working, I was 12 years old and I was willing to do whatever I had to do to make money so that I didn't have to depend on my mom to get me those things that I wanted to have, because she gave me everything I needed, but there were things that I wanted, like name brand jeans, or, name brand tennis shoes or whatever it looked like, and not something that was secondhand from Goodwill or St. Vincent or whatever.
Exactly. And I remember that well, especially I remember in school, when you went through, I'm a little older than you, I think, and we had saddle shoes. So I don't know if you remember saddle shoes, but I remember when they decided that we could wear any shoes that we wanted. We still had to wear a uniform, but we could wear any shoes that we wanted. And this was the late 70s, early 80s. And when I saw, like, now that was now a class that was a way to classify people, right? Oh, did you have we had in California a store called Zodi's, which is comparable to, a discount shop now, like a Ross or something like that. But it was even lower than Ross, if there's such a thing. And it was like, people would be clowning you if you're like, those shoes came from Zodi's, or if you had Nikes, or if you had Doc Martens, or not Doc Martens, Deck shoes were the Sperry topsiders. That was the big shoe at the time that everybody was, did you have real topsiders or fake topsiders? That was the big thing. But that became this stratification of classifying people in our school, who ironically we'd been to school together for years at that point. And now all of a sudden there was this now levels of like, oh, now I know you actually are poor, right? Or you don't have the money to have the things that I have, and that just now becoming this classifier. So when you think about all of that, so how has all of those things maybe guided how you've been influenced in the decisions around money that you made, particularly when you were younger, maybe while you were in college, or as you began to think about your work career? Did it guide the decisions that you made? What was the influence that those early experiences had on your journey?
Well, I would say that it was very influential. And the reason why I say that is because as I grew older, I didn't realize what a poverty mindset that had taken over and as just a part of my everyday life and everyday being. Though I thought I was just being fiscally responsible and being, managing my funds and being resourceful and that sort of thing. When in actuality, as later on in life, and when that situation changed, it was actually a scarcity mentality that I grew up with as part of my inner core that I didn't realize had taken shape and taken hold and did mold my decisions and how I operated and how I viewed money and its relationship to me. And a part of that goes back to the fact too that I was also a teen mom, and I was a teen mom who ended up on welfare. So similar to my mom, who was a teen mom, and she was on welfare. It was kind of a generational thing that I vowed that I was going to break. Well, it didn't happen. And when I graduated from high school at 16, I also had a 1-month-old son.
Wow.
So I had to immediately go straight to work to take care of him because I didn't want to be another statistic ending up on welfare, which was the statistic in health class that they told all of us girls. They said, of all the girls in this class, by the end of the year, at least one of you is going to be pregnant. And then I said, not me, not me. Well, wow. Sure enough, it was me. And they said, and if that girl ends up pregnant, 90% of the time she's going to end up on welfare. And I said, okay, if it's going to be me, I'm not going to end up on welfare. And so because of my work experiences before, while I was even younger, from 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, I really was very good at doing administrative work from a very young age because of the City of Madison Summer Youth Employment Programs. Shout out to the City of Madison. and they gave me the foundation that I needed to actually start a work experience immediately out of high school at 16, where I could go and started working for the state of Wisconsin, Department of Transportation during the day, and Wisconsin Bell, which is no longer Wisconsin Bell, but anyways, at night, to make money so that I wouldn't have to end up on welfare and be another statistic. So I did that for an entire year. And don't you know, in that entire year, I missed my son's first words. I missed his first steps. I missed all of his firsts. I missed them because I was working from 7:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. every single night for it, every single day for a year, every weekday for a year. And it just wasn't healthy. And I regretted it. I regretted it so much. And I was married by this time. And so I said to my son's father and husband, I was like, you're the man of the house. You're supposed to work and I'm supposed to be home taking care of the kids. I had very traditional values.
That's all right. That's all right.
And so I said, you go get a job and I'm going to stay home. Well, needless to say, we still ended up on welfare and moving into Section 8 housing and dealing and living in a low income life. But it was because of these experiences that I learned quickly that I had to rely on whatever I could bring into the home. And that's what was going to have to be used to manage. And I had surrounded myself with a community of people who helped guide me because they recognized I was so young. I didn't really know what I was doing and I needed a lot of guidance.
Well, and people need a lot of guidance.
And absolutely. And I still need guidance. But at this time, it was so critical because one of the things they explained to me was the importance of paying bills on time. And so because I now had my own apartment, I had my own family, I needed to understand how to budget money. And so they came over and they showed me, they asked for all my bills. I pulled them all out and we wrote them all down, made a list and basically made a budget of this is your income. These are your expenses. This is what's left. Mm-hmm. Elaine, what was left was $20.
Listen, and you were lucky because I was in the negative. So I was like, whoa, I need to figure something out real quick.
Right. But it was those $20 I got in ones from the bank and I would put them in 10 envelopes, $2 each. And every day for 10 days between pay periods, I had $2 a day that I could have in my pocket. And it was so funny because I truly believed I was not broke because I had my $2 envelope.
You're like, hey.
And it was just those foundational behaviors and attitudes and mentality really, I think, paved the way for me to understand the importance of being responsible with money, especially when you have responsibilities. I mean, you have a whole family, you've got things to do. You can't just go out willy-nilly spending and buying things that are unnecessary and wasting money. And, that's just frivolous. And you're certainly going to be setting yourself up to fail and by not being responsible with money.
Well, and that discipline, right? So what's responsible, for me in my mind, responsible is creating the budget. The discipline is executing on the budget, right? And saying, what is it that I got to do? Hack my brain. I know that if I put $2 in an envelope and I carry that envelope, now I know, as opposed to you could have put all $20 in an envelope, but you knew enough about your character and how your brain worked to be like, no, that's not what I need to do. I need to just take this one envelope with this $2 and that's what I get for the day, to be able to psychologically get your brain in the mindset of creating discipline. Because to me, that's a different thing. But I want to go back to this, right, especially in our current political climate around welfare and the stigma of welfare, because I think that all too often it goes down that dark rabbit hole of like, welfare is not good, you're shiftless, you're all these negative things. But I know, as somebody who was also a single parent and had to leverage benefits to get me out of the situation, but also we understanding that the circumstances of the system actually incentivizes you, it actually not incentivizes, makes it difficult to get out. So one of the things that I always talk about is, okay, once you get assets over $2,000, you can be kicked off of welfare. Well, I don't know about you, but $2,000 is not a lot. It's not like you're about to go buy a house or anything like that. And so, which means if you are making a side hustle, which we'll get into in the next segment, but if you get into a side hustle, well, now you have to hide your income. And I think that the misconception, and I don't even know if it's a misconception, but the propaganda of like, people who are on welfare don't want to contribute. People on welfare don't want to work. I think that there's always a few rotten apples. Are there people who that is their philosophy? Absolutely. But I think through your story and through my story, what would have happened to us had we not had that available? I don't know about you, but I know even with all of that, I ended up sleeping in my car for a period of time. And how do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in the day when I was on welfare and with my young son, my mentality always was, so my mom said to me once she found out that I was pregnant, she said, your life is not over. It's going to be harder, but you can still do whatever you put your mind to. So even though we did end up on welfare, my mind said, I'm not going to stay here. This is not going to be a lifestyle for me. I'm going to just use it to help me get where I need to go. And then once I'm able, I'm off of this. This is not going to be our way of life. Although some people who, were in our community, that was a way of life. And they would, like back then, you got welfare for every new child you had every 2 years. And I remember when they changed it to every 5 years, because I knew people who would purposely have children every 2 years so they could stay on welfare.
Right.
And I was like, that is not, I even back then I was like, I know I'm meant for more. I'm not meant to stay down here. Yes. But even when I was trying to get off, you said, you were so right. They make it hard to get off because they give you all the free food stamps and all the medical assistance and WIC and child care assistance and all of the things to try to help you along. And so it's easy to stay locked into that when you think about, well, if I have to pay for all my own daycare, my daycare was $400 a month back then. And the low income housing I was in was $370. So because it was income based, and by this time I'm making a little bit more money. But it was during those times when my paycheck got stretched so thin, I ended up going to the churches and getting the free food with the black and white boxes and all of the things so that I could still feed my family and not have to depend on the government. Because like you said, in this political climate, we don't know what's going to last for how long and who's going to get what. And already so much has been cut by people who were depending on it. And now they're suffering. And it's a really sad state of affairs that we're in today.
I mean, and we're going to wrap up this segment, but I want to bring this point home. Like, let's just say I've had people, and I know in my life where my boss has said, I want to give you a raise. And I have to say, you can't give me a raise because that raise is not going to be enough for me to save to get an apartment. Because once I get that raise, I'm now going to be kicked out of the apartment that I'm in. So this is the trap that you become trapped in, because you're like, I want that raise. I want to get out of this apartment. But as soon as I do, and I report that, and now I don't qualify to this house, and I can't just move into a new house. You giving me $1 or $2 raise today, like, doesn't mean that I can go out and get a different apartment, right? Like, and so I think these are some of the workings that we've got to work through of like, what's the transition? What's the transition policy to be able to be like, okay, you can have this, you can have a raise for up to 12 months so that you can save money to now get out off of Section 8 to move into an apartment you can afford, because you're not necessarily making enough to get into the new apartment, but you're making too much to stay in the apartment that you have. But this is a really great conversation. We're going to like transition this into thinking about what is the cost of time. So I want my listeners to come back into segment 2, where we're going to be getting more great insights from Renee. You're listening to the Do.Different.Better Show. I am your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Catch us in the next segment, where we're really going to be talking about how time is money, what you can do in your job, your life, whatever the case may be is, and really reimagining the link between time and money and leveraging time to get what you want. Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to the Do.Different.Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. And as we talked about in segment 1, I have an amazing guest, Renee Hastings, who is the CEO of Executive Help Now, in the first segment, she dropped some gems talking about her mindset and some of the strong influences she had, that even though she went through some tough times as a teen mom, stayed with her well beyond that, to get her from rags to riches, as we like to say. But now we're going to get into some other types of mindset around money, and that is the cost of time. So Renee, your entire business is built on reclaiming time for others. But how did you learn the cost of your own time?
I would say that I learned the cost of my own time as I was working in corporate America. As I had mentioned before, I started working at a very early age and building my skills as an executive assistant over time, and eventually started supporting the C-suite of Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies. And when you are supporting executives on that level, there's definitely a skill set that is required in order to be able to manage that type of executive. But it was something that I absolutely loved to do, and something that came very naturally for me. But as my kids got older and they graduated from high school, and it was just me at the house with my husband, I just had all this time on my hands, and still a passion and a drive and desire to support executives. So I started my own business. Someone saw in me that I should be a business owner, and I was like, I don't think so. I'm pretty comfortable with my golden handcuffs in corporate America, with my paid benefits and health insurance and paid vacations and regular 9-to-5 stability. That was important to me. But then the more, it just takes someone planting a seed. And then the more I thought about it and I found myself in a situation, I was like, well, why not? Let me give it a try. So I, did all the paperwork, started my business, and told all my friends that what I was doing, and they became clients. Well, my clients kept telling their friends how their lives had been changed by getting some help. And it was really rewarding to see the impact that I was having. But then the more they told their friends, the busier I got on the nights and weekends. And so I'm working my full-time corporate job from 8 to 5. And then I'm trying to be half a wife, after I get off work, cook some dinner maybe, and then start working on my business starting at about 8 o'clock at night, and not getting to bed till 2 or 3 in the morning, and having to get back up at 6 again and to do it all over again. And doing this week after week, month after month after month, it was exhausting. And that love I had for doing what I do started to wane. The quality of my work started to suffer, not only in the business, but also on my day job. And because I have such a high standard of excellence for myself and those around me, that just was unacceptable. Something had to change. And I was missing opportunities. It was just a really bad situation when you're burning the candle at both ends, trying to do all of the things yourself. And yes. So you have no time. And so I hired my first virtual assistant. Her name was Ashley, back in 2020. And she basically was an identical me. So when I interviewed her and got to know her, every question I asked her, she responded the exact same way that I would respond.
Oh, wow.
It was so funny. I couldn't even believe it. And so I was like, yes, this is absolutely going to work. So while I was working my full-time day job and I was getting messages that I would check on lunch and on breaks, I would just simply forward them to Ashley. And I would say, have 3 words, please assist, period. Thanks, exclamation point. And she handled all the things for my business while I was still working my day job. And so the time that got freed up for me in the evening was just a game changer. When I was able to get more rest, more sleep, I was able to be more recognized and create more space and capacity for doing the things that I should be doing to take care of myself. And so that's when I realized the value of time and reclaiming your time, and the importance of recognizing how you're spending your time and the impact that it could be having not only on your business, but also on your physical health.
And one of the things that I feel like people get caught up with, because I always tell, especially small business owners, whether they're having a side hustle or whether they're doing their business full time, is this notion of, I say to them, think of yourself. Sometimes it's hard for when you come out of a worker mentality, you're always like, well, I can do all the things, right? I have to do all the things, because if I don't do it, then either it won't be done well, it won't be done at all, or it won't be done as good as I do it. And so what was the mindset shift that you had to say to yourself, like, there was a breaking point? What was the breaking point? Was there like something like a kid's practice that you missed? Like, what was that breaking point? Like, I had to break down my ego and say, I need help.
Well, it was during that time when I was working that full-time job, and my nighttime job, my business was taking just as much time as my corporate job. And my breaking point was when I got to work and I just could not even focus. I couldn't function. My capacity had been so diminished that I was just failing. And with how I was raised, failure is not an option. Anything less than the absolute best is not an option. And so that was a breaking point when I was like, things have got to change. I cannot have work with mistakes in it. I just cannot. Right. And so that is how I determined for myself what was the breaking point. And I had to say, I can't wear all the hats. And that's also the point when I discovered that I have trust issues.
Well, okay, that's a word. Say that one more time for the people in the back.
I discovered that I have trust issues. And I didn't even know that this was a thing. But when it came time for me to delegate some of the things that I was forwarding to Ashley, there was something inside of me that was scared. I was afraid. I was like, what? And I'm a praying woman. So I'm like, Lord, why am I feeling such trepidation about handing this over and allowing this person into my life and exposing myself and all of my stuff to this other person? I had to get to the root. I had to get to the root of that. If I was going to scale this business or be anything in this business, I had to get to the root of that, find out what it was all about, fix it, get healed, and keep on moving. Because I know that I knew then and I know now that if you are going to scale your business and you're going to grow to be any size, that you have to build a team. You can't wear all the hats. You can't do it all yourself.
Yeah, and you shouldn't. So I just want to ask you about the math, because I think sometimes people think that they can't afford it. So how did you had a job and now you're thinking of bringing on payroll, right? So what was sort of the math where you are saying, okay, yes, I can afford to do this? I have my own thoughts, but I'd love to hear from you. Like, how did what was the calculation, high level, but what was the calculation of like, I could pay somebody this, I'm making this, what's an acceptable margin, knowing that you had to get some of that stuff off your plate as well, and what was the value of that, even though maybe the amount of money you might be making might be not as much as you thought? Because I think that's the other thing that people get caught up. Like, I'm going to lose the money, right? Because I now have to pay somebody else to do my job. So I'd love to hear more about just any part of the process there that lands.
So for me, I would say when I started the business, I didn't go into it to make money. And I know that sounds so bizarre, but I just went into it because I was bored.
All right. Okay.
I wanted something else to do, and I still had all this passion and I had time. And so it wasn't something I did because I needed the money or wanted to make $1 million or whatever. It's just something I wanted to do because it was something that was fun, and it's something I did really well, and it's something that changed people's lives. And so I got fulfillment out of that. And so when the money started coming, I was like, oh, that's cool. We get some money too. Oh, that's awesome. And so when it came time for me to hire somebody, that's when I did have to start getting more granular about the finances and what does it look like? Because first of all, what is my health worth? So she can have all the money. I don't even care. Was kind of what was going through my head. But I was like, okay, I need to really think about this because I am a business owner and I'm a real business owner. So I need to start making some really important decisions. And so when I thought about how much I was bringing in, and Ashley and I talked about what her rate was for what she charged, then it just made sense that either I would raise my rate that I was charging my clients so I could afford her. And that's kind of how it all started on a baby scale.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just raise rates.
Raising the rates. And one of the things whenever I get an opportunity to speak in front of an audience, which is often a lot of time women entrepreneurs, and I tell them at the end of my at the end of my talk or whatever the case, somebody will ask me, okay, what's your final word? What's the last thing you want to leave people with? And I turn to the audience and I say, listen, I don't know any of you. I don't know what you do. I don't know what your rates are. I don't know how much it costs for you to do what you do, but I want you to leave here and immediately raise your rate by a minimum of 10%. And if you can't rationalize why you do it, I say just do it because Elaine told you to. That's your rationale. That's your logic, because we often are, particularly women, but also people of color, we are grossly underpricing ourselves, not only for what it costs to actually do the thing that we are being paid to do, whether it's make something or provide a service, but we just underestimate our value. And I think that also ties into this work culture, right? Of like, we're here to work as for somebody else, as an employer. But we're going to get more into your venture. We're going to head into a break now. So for those of you listening, don't forget to follow and like and subscribe. What Renee is doing, you can check her out at executivehelpnow.org. But you can also check out her personal speaker page. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. But definitely like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow on AM 950. But also at Do.Different.Better on YouTube. You can stream and listen to this at any time on all of your favorite platforms. But just to remind you, you're listening to the Do.Different.Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and I will see you after the break. Welcome back to the last installment of the Do.Different.Better Show. We are talking to Renee Hastings, who is the CEO and founder of Executive Help Now. So in segment 1, we talked a little bit about her own personal money journey. In segment 2, we talked about the cost of time and how we actually undervalue our time, not only in getting help to support us, but also thinking whether or not we can afford it. And now we're going to come into the home stretch, and we're really going to go deep into not only Renee's personal entrepreneur journey, but also what is on the horizon. She's got some exciting stuff that she wants to share with you. But first, let's go back a little bit to the beginning, right? So you said you started your side hustle in 1996. What did that early grind teach you about risk and revenue and resilience?
I really appreciate this question because it was in these moments and these new experiences that I really had to, make those determinations. Like, what is most important to this business? And even though it was a side hustle at the time, I was still responsible for people's pay. I was still responsible for building a team. I was still responsible for products and supplies and making sure that it was available. So it was a whole new mindset and way of thinking as to what is going to be the most important thing. And so I always thought I wanted the highest quality product. I wanted the best representatives on our team to represent us well. And then I wanted to make sure that everyone was paid properly for the work that they were doing. And so there's inventory involved and all of these sorts of things. And so I had to figure out what makes the most sense, so that, because I had some perishables involved. And so ordering just in time so that I didn't lose product in between weeks and that sort of thing. So it was a lot of learning. I had to basically surround myself with people who had already been where I wanted to go. Mm-hmm. So I could learn from them. I learned from books. Excuse me. One of my favorite books from back in the day was The Millionaire Next Door and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Those are some of the first. And then even one that was done by Keller Williams, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. There were so many principles involved in each of those books that really helped me to understand my numbers and understand the importance of these numbers if I wanted to be able to scale and have appropriate supply at the right time.
I love that. And that is so often what I've talked about with founders around, first of all, deciding that you want to scale, right? Do you want this to stay a lifestyle business, which is great, and that's fine, and that's amazing. But also, you are going to have to really imagineer differently if you want to scale, right? And going back to, like, do you have trust issues? Are you a disciplined person? Are you keen to write things down? Because that's the other part of it, right? Mm-hmm. As a business owner supporting other business owners, what are maybe some of the biggest financial blind spots that you see? And do you see something maybe specific as it relates to women?
So some of the biggest financial blind spots that I see that may even relate more to women is the fact that there's money to be earned, and that when you're making money, you have to set money aside for all of those unforeseen things. So there needs to be buckets, so many buckets. And I'm not sure we have enough buckets to put all of the things, for the contingencies, for the planning, because you know on a day-to-day what it takes to meet your obligations, whether it's for payroll, excuse me, hope we can cut that out, whether it's for payroll or any other overhead that you have in the actual running of the business. Subscriptions, do we have the right subscriptions? Do we have too many subscriptions? Are there subscriptions that we can consolidate and quit wasting money on unnecessary things? Are there different platforms that we can use that can do more than one thing very well? Or do we have to have 10 different things? So those things, I think, really need some serious analysis in order to make sure that you're not wasting money and thinking that just because this is the way you've always done things, that this is the way you need to keep on doing things, especially with the advent of AI. There's so much that can be done now with so little and so quickly to increase your productivity that I encourage and invite everyone, but especially women, to look into how to become proficient in more than just one tool, or to surround yourself with other people who know how to be proficient in more than one tool.
So thank you for that. And while I ask my next question, feel free to grab a drink of water. All too often I hear from founders, when do I do that? They're so wrapped up in doing the thing, right? I think Stephen Covey calls it the whirlwind of the business, right? I have my approach to thinking about this, but how do you say to yourself or to other, like, when do you do that? When do you do that analysis? Because it can get so easy to just be on the rat reel of, like, I got to serve my clients, I got to produce the thing, I've got to do payroll, and so how do you think about looking up to be able to do that analysis? Because it also requires time that you're not getting paid for.
That's right. And so when you find yourself doing more things that are not income producing things, that you need to make a change.
And put it on the calendar, right?
Yes, absolutely. Put it on the calendar. to make make the decision that, look, if I'm spending all my time doing social media posts and I got a whole business to run, that something needs to change there. That those don't go together.
Right? I call it the highest use of your time. I say, think of yourself as a $300 an hour employee. Now, does that mean you don't take out the garbage? No. But what it means is, can you have somebody else take out the garbage or lick envelopes, right? You shouldn't be licking envelopes, right?
Right.
There's somebody else. Even if that's your niece, your nephew, pay them $5 and say, I need you to seal all 100 of these envelopes. That's now time you can do something else with. But something else that I tell founders and something that I practice, I actually close for part of the year. So I close for the month of July to the public, and I close for the month of December to the public. And that's the opportunity for the office. Like, is there a process that we need to fix? Is there an analysis of a tool that we need to really understand? Is this tool really serving us? Everybody's been complaining about it for the last 6 months. So now let's go down this journey of analyzing this tool, looking at other tools. And within 30 days, either we're going to keep the tool we have and fix it, or we're onboarding a new tool, and we know that next year we're going to examine that tool and see if it's working. So for me, it's really about scheduling the time to do the analysis, and then scheduling the time if there is a change that needs to be made. You don't need to necessarily make it today. So for us, it's, if I decide that we're going to make a change, we schedule that change for December. We took July, we did the analysis. Now we're going to schedule a change for December. December is pretty much slow for most people, unless you're like in retail. But whatever you're slow, everybody's got a slow period of the year, whether it's you're a tax accountant, whether you're, I don't know if your business slows at all. Everybody needs you all the time. But there's usually these ebbs and flows that you see in the business. So using that as an opportunity to look inward and do that analysis that you're talking about is super important. Well, in the final minutes that we have, I want to get into, you're really looking ahead. So what's your next venture, and what's the money, time, legacy that you're shaping for what comes next for you?
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about our future. So when we started the business, it was primarily doing what I knew how to do best, which was support executives. So we provided some administrative support, all the email management, calendar management, travel arrangements, presentations, preparing for board meetings, all of these sorts of things, because that's what we could all do with our eyes closed and hands tied behind our backs, me and everyone on the team now. And that has served us very well, and we still love doing those things. And we evolved into even, supporting social media management and engagement, and now producing remote video podcasts and podcast production services. And all of these things have been amazing and have saved our clients tons of time, so that they are now able to have capacity to cast vision for their teams and strategize for their futures and be home more often to spend time with their families or go to more of their kids' games and things like that. And so when we see the impact that we are having on the lives of these companies and our clients, it really is our fuel, and it will remain our fuel. But going forward, I love how you talked about taking the time to plan for what's coming next. So we are taking all of Q3 to get ready for Q4, a launch in Q4 of an announcement that we are niching down our service offerings to support the venture capital and private equity space and their portfolio companies, to provide these services specifically for them, to help free them up so that they can do the things that they were funded to do. So I'm super excited about that.
I love that. And I hope that there's maybe even an opportunity where the private equity and venture funds have you support the portfolio companies that they're invested in, because those folks absolutely, probably, I'll be honest with you, needed more than the private equity firms. But that's my own personal bias. I think the venture capitalists, they're fine, but their portfolio companies, I hope that and maybe that's a selling point. You're like, hey, and how would you like to make this available to your portfolio companies? Because they're startups, they're upstarts, and they're doing all the things, and they don't necessarily know all the things. They might be a good scientist, but they're not a good like calendar manager, right?
Right. And there's so many requirements that come with funding. Just even the reporting requirements and making sure that they're meeting their milestones and their objectives, and they need a strategic partner to step alongside them who is good at managing those details so that they can do all those things that they were funded to do. So we're super excited about that.
I'm super excited for you, and I can't wait to check in with you in a year from now to see how it's going. We'll definitely have you back. Well, my final question is, what is the money lesson you wish someone had taught you 10 years ago, but you had to learn the hard way?
The money lesson that I wish I had known 10 years ago is that you are worthy of abundance. You are worthy of abundance. Your name and $1 million can go in the same sentence.
Mic drop. We're done. We're done. We're done. We're good. Thank you, Renee. This has been an amazing show. I'm just so blessed that you took time out of your very, very busy schedule to join me and talk to my audience. I hope that you will come back. This was an amazing show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. You are one of the best hosts I've ever had the privilege of sitting with and chatting with. This is so fun, so easy. You are absolutely phenomenal. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, and my audience is phenomenal as well. So for all of you out there, definitely think about how you could leverage an executive assistant. Even if you're not yet an executive, you still need an assistant. I know you do. So you've been listening to the Do Different Better Show. My special guest, Renee Hastings from Executive Help Now, and going on to their new exciting adventure in supporting VCs and private equity. I know you're out there listening to shows, so make sure that you give her a call. She actually has a way to get in contact with her really quickly. You can text VA now at 1-866-943-3591 for a free guide to working with a virtual assistant. And I am sure that will turn into hiring somebody on her team. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us at Do Different Better. You can DM me at Instagram at Do Better with Elaine. And don't forget to follow AM 950 Radio as well. I will see you next week with another amazing episode of the Do Different Better Show. Until then, don't forget and work as much as you can to do different better. See you all next time.